I'm Jordan.
And I'm Rosanna.
And on this podcast, we explore how to take life off autopilot
and relentlessly pursue a life worth living together. Welcome to Season 2, Episode 6 of the Relentless Pursuit podcast. This episode is titled Our Flaws and Shortcomings.
That's right. So we're going to trim this from probably a couple-hour conversation that we could have to our typical 30 to 40 minutes. But this is one of those conversations where we are going to get, I think, pretty vulnerable with one another because we're really going to talk about ourselves.
And with you.
And with all of you as well. And when we were originally thinking through season 2, this was one of those that I kind of proposed, and I never really thought it would make the final cut. So I'm very glad to be here having this conversation with you now, and I think it's necessary that we have it.
He proposed this. We hadn't even yet finished recording season 1, and we were starting to generate a list of ideas for season 2 when we were driving on our road trip because we had a bunch of time in the car. And so as we were talking and thinking about things, we would just add it to the notes section on our phone. And he's like, we should do an entire episode calling out our specific individual flaws and shortcomings. Mm-hmm. And I looked at him and I said, are you insane? You want me to publicly talk about the ways in which I think I fall short as a human being and share that with the people who are listening? Mm-hmm. And it's not even just an audience of people who don't know us. There are people who know us that are listening.
Well, they could maybe add to the list too.
I'm sure they could. But you want me to admit that publicly. I had a couple words for him.
Right.
But here we are having this conversation.
Yes, it was good. So, I think it's really important for us to have this conversation with one another because it's great for people to be with other people that they trust and with whom they can be vulnerable around, with whom they can get, I think, some feedback from. And also, it's great to do. I mean, a lot of what we'll be talking about is a little bit more of self-reflection, but it's great to have someone who knows you that you can do that alongside. And so that's why I think it's really important exercise that we're about to indulge in, but maybe more importantly, something that we don't do enough, or we do maybe only when something goes wrong and we have to point out or talk about one of these flaws rather than acknowledging them, anticipating them, and then making improvements to ourselves as we go. So
I think we're lucky in the fact that we can do this with each other. I know that some people are in relationships that they maybe don't feel safe or are unable to be vulnerable with the other person in a relationship. So this doesn't necessarily just have to be your spouse if you're not there, but even having trusted people in your corner, whether it's, siblings or parents or friends that you trust to be able to do this sort of thing with.
Yeah. And it makes me think of other times where sometimes we quote unquote admit a fault of ours around someone else, almost in a sense of fishing for compliments. I feel like when we were dating, you would do that, I'm so fat. And that's my opportunity to sweep in and be like, oh, no, you're not, honey. Come on, to try to build you up. I think this is different because anything that, I'm going to say, anything that you're going to say, I think we can both acknowledge and then just talk about maybe why that is and come up with some ideas for how to strengthen that, turn a weakness or a flaw of ours into something that's strong.
But I think that takes a level of maturity and understanding, and the mindset of wanting to be better. Yeah. Because, some people, just depending on their background or past relationships, they might carry some baggage or some trauma that doesn't allow them to see that or do that. And so that might not be as easy for them to do. Whereas if a partner or a spouse said, I really want to talk to you about something I'm seeing in you, and, expressing whatever that fault or shortcoming or failure, whatever that nuance is, and then having someone really just respond to that in a very negative or a way that is misunderstood. So,
right, having a conversation like this under the wrong pretense can really lead to some backlash.
Correct.
I mean, yeah, can you imagine me sitting down and being like, all right, Rosanna, we're going to go through, I've prepared a list of things that are wrong with you. And I'd like for you to receive these and make all the appropriate, improvements.
Yes, to my liking, if you could just adjust these in a matter, just a
Yeah.
click to the left and a click to the right, then we should be good.
Right. So I can't imagine that going very well. And also this is a give and take as well. We're both opening up, and I think that's really important. So I can't, and we wouldn't recommend you like thinking through everything someone else has wrong with them and inviting them to sit down so you can delineate those items to them. But really, let me describe the format of the show. So what Rosanna and I did was we sat down and on our own came up with what we would consider three of our biggest, how would we phrase it? Three of our biggest flaws or shortcomings.
I wouldn't even say a flaw, like a shortcoming, like areas of improvement, things
Areas
that
of
we
improvement.
we recognize about ourselves that like are not top notch.
Okay. And for fun, we also came up with one for the other person that we have not yet disclosed. So this can get really interesting really fast, depending on how that goes.
As we reveal these live on the air.
Exactly. So I'm looking forward to getting to that part and hearing all of the wonderful feedback that you have in store for me.
Okay. But all with the intention of what?
All with the intention of growing. I wanted to bring this up because I had recently read a book called Thinking in Bets by Annie Duke. She is a professional poker player, but in this book and in her own life has taken the principles of excellent like poker playing, and you apply that to all the decisions that you make. And she said one of the things that poker players do, but actually all of us do as well, is when things go right, we tend to take the credit. And so like in a poker hand, when you win, you're like, oh, it's because I'm a good player. But when things go wrong, we tend to blame someone else, or we tend to blame just bad luck in general. And that's what happens in poker. You can imagine like, oh, shoot, like I did everything I was supposed to do and I still lost. It's just bad luck. But in life as well, we're relatively quick to point fingers. And so this book does an excellent job helping individuals think through decision making, but it also points out that it can be a constructive exercise to really like think through who you are, think through where some of the deficits are. So when you are engaging in any sort of planning or any sort of decision making, that you're aware of where those gaps may be, and that helps you make better decisions, but it also gives you areas to reinforce. And so that is really why we're having this conversation, is because we have to, if we intend on growing, we have to be self-reflective. And like I said, that self-reflective process is strengthened when you have someone to do it with.
Well, one thing I think is funny is that just as humans, we like naturally tend to want to hide and are afraid of admitting like our faults, our failures, and our shortcomings. And now this example is not one that's like, okay, this is like a fault, but like, have you ever like fallen asleep watching a movie? Like one of us has fallen asleep watching a
Many
movie,
times.
but the other person is still awake, and then you look over and be like, "Are you asleep?" And what's the first thing you say?
No, I'm not sleeping.
No, I'm not sleeping. Like
Why do we even do that? That doesn't even make sense.
Like, why can't we just say, like, why can't we own who we are, the fact that we're exhausted and that this movie is boring and that like we couldn't keep our eyes open, but like right away we'll be like, no, I wasn't sleeping, or like, same thing, like, babe, you're snoring. No, I'm not. Like, why can't we just admit it? So I think part of it is just like knowing who we are, and none of us are perfect. But I think for me, and maybe I don't know if it's just to me or women in general, we want to like portray this idea of being perfect, of having it all together. Like, oh yeah, she's such a good mom. And I'd be like, well, what are you basing that off of? What you see on my Instagram feed? You're like,
Right.
I'm not posting me melting down or the kids melting down. It's what you think you see. And so this obsession with us wanting to be perfect or thinking that we need to have it all together all of the time, that we can't own the fact that we have some areas we need to work on if we want to be better.
Yeah, I think that's a much better story to tell. So, I mean, in a sense, there's a story that we want others to believe about us, but that applies to ourselves. There's a story we want to believe about ourselves as well, which is why we're quicker to cover over or deny our faults rather than address them.
Yeah. Well, and I think this was recently. You told me something, like, not that we were arguing by any means, but you, like, pointed out something, and I was very quick to, like, nip what you said. And then I remember, like, walking away and kind of, like, processing, like, the conversation that we had, and I was like, oh, he was really right. And I kind of just ended the conversation because I didn't want to be told that like I was wrong or that I like overstepped. And I remember coming back to you, I mean, the same day, maybe 20 minutes later, and be like, I shouldn't have said that. Like, you were actually right. And I felt hurt by it because I didn't want to admit to myself that I was wrong. And so that is not something, 5 months ago or 5 years ago that I would have done. I would have like kind of brood over it for a while and been mad at you for a little bit.
I
And,
don't know. Yeah.
yeah, but that natural tendency of like feeling like because somebody else points something out about us, like we're the ones that are hurt when maybe what we're doing is hurting the other person.
Right.
And so just being able to listen and process.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, so let's get to the fun. So we've each listed
Your
three things.
idea of fun and my idea of fun are a little different.
There has to be a dose of discomfort with your fun, I think.
Okay.
All right, so we have our list here of our list of 3 for ourselves. Would you care to go first, or would you care to go second?
I will let you choose.
Then I'd say you go first.
Okay,
Batter up.
ladies first. Here we
Ladies
go.
first.
All right, so if I had to say what one of my faults or shortcomings is, I think the first thing I would say is that I am uptight.
What do you mean by that?
Okay, so I feel like I've called myself this a couple times, like the momager, which they call, I've mentioned, like they call
yeah.
it, right? Like I manage our kids, our house, our calendar, our lives, the laundry, the groceries, meal prepping, just where everybody has to be, like logistics. And so like I'm always so like focused on like what needs to happen and when and how, and like, okay, a load of laundry has to go in now because soccer socks have to be cleaned for tomorrow. And like I'm constantly, my mind is always so busy and so focused on what needs to get done that it's hard for me to let go.
Okay, so this is, and I found this too, there's a thin line between strengths and weaknesses. And I think that line is just, I would just define it as excess. So really what you're describing is a strength in the sense that you are, the logistics coordinator of the household and of many other things. And that's necessary, right? And that's a strength. Things are organized. We're never scrambling last minute for something. Those are good things, right?
We're always prepared. Right. And this is what I said in my notes. I said, so here's what's good about this.
Right.
Like when you're type A, like everything runs very smoothly here. Everything is very efficient. Nobody ever forgets a lunch or a soccer practice, or like everybody is where they need to be and has what they need all of the time.
Right.
Here's what's bad about it is that sometimes I'm so focused on the task or making sure that there are no deficits that I am not living in the moment and enjoying it. And I think the area I see it most, I sometimes see it with the kids because I'm like so focused on like getting them in the car and on time and that like there are some tender moments that I miss because I'm too fixated on the end result and not the means on the way.
Well, I've heard some people are described as like task-oriented people and others are people-oriented people. And I think you're good at both, but when this facet of your personality maybe kind of runs a little bit excessively, then you're much more focused on the task and you miss out on the personable moments along the way.
Right. And people would describe me as personable, but those are in moments where like I am not managing anything else and I'm like supposed to be personable. I'm probably one of the most personable people. But when I have to...
I'm just kidding.
Second to you, darling.
No.
But when the two mix, what takes over is this like management mentality. And although I see that with the kids sometimes, I think I see it with you most. I am unable to relax. My mind is always like 50 steps ahead of where I'm at. So sometimes it's hard for me to let go.
Sometimes. I mean, I'd say most of our time together is of quality. But sometimes it's like, all right, let's have an intimate conversation. Okay. All right, so tomorrow at 8:30, I have... I'm like, whoa, time out here. This is not my idea of an intimate conversation. But there's some necessity along with that, too.
And so that's something, too, that I think... I love my mom. I think I bring her up like every third episode, but she is someone who kind of helps me see that too when she says things like, you do more in the first 3 hours of your day than some people accomplish in a week. So give yourself some grace and like take a moment to breathe or take a moment to do nothing. And so more and more each week I try and find those moments where I'm just... Okay, like the bathroom, if it doesn't get cleaned today, it'll get cleaned tomorrow. And if it's not tomorrow and it's next week, Thursday, so be it. Ain't nobody coming over and using my bathroom upstairs. No one can see the state of it except for me. So like to take some of that pressure off of the to-do.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I will
Oh boy,
get to my
it's
list
folded.
here.
He's keeping it private.
No, you already looked at this.
He did. He put it down right before
this. Yeah.
we recorded, and I saw.
Yeah, I'm just not sure where to start here. Okay, mine. I'll pick this one because I think this is similar, but it goes in a different direction for me. So I'm more of, I would just say, I can be a thinker, which will I think cause me to. There's many moments where it requires action and it requires like a response, kind of in the moment. But because my default is to like take a step back to try to think, to try to absorb, to try to understand. And I would say that can be a strength in some cases, but in many other cases, I've missed so many opportunities where something should have been said or something should have been done. And I think it also leads to, I would call it like this analysis paralysis as well, where, I mean, how many things have I just like endlessly like thought through or like even studied or read about, and then there's no action that takes place, or if it does happen, it happens well after the fact.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I've seen you do that because you are. Well, what's one of the terms we've used to describe you through the years? Cerebral. You're just like a thinker, and you're very smart, and you're very inquisitive, and you want all of the information in front of you, and you want to weigh it equally, but that takes a whole lot of time, which is the opposite of me because I'm a responder. Like someone says something, I think about it, I process it, I like spit it out. So what's good about that for the two of us is that both of us aren't like always responding right away. One of us kind of steps back,
It could be
and
a
one of us,
little volatile. Yeah.
right.
So I can't think of, I mean, I think the humorous example is when you're in a moment and like somebody makes you mad and you don't say anything, but then like in the shower the next day, then you think of the thing that you want to say. Like, oh, you know what? I should have told that guy, you know? I mean, that is, you know, my many moments in my life, like in a nutshell, where there's certain things where I'm like, oh, I should have said this, or I should have responded this way. But instead of doing that, I felt like I wanted to, there's just more processing that I needed to take place. What if I'm wrong? What if I don't know the full story? And then I misstep and make a bigger fool of myself. So it's like, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to do anything at this moment. I will later, but only after I put the requisite time and effort into making sure I get it right.
So how do you feel like you're working to like combat that at this point? Like, you know that like,
I don't know.
You let your overthinking paralyze you from doing. Do you feel like you take that you're working on steps to like take more action in a quicker amount of time and not worry about the like being right, but like responding so that the moment doesn't pass by and then that chance is gone?
Yeah, I'm not really sure what to do. I mean, it's so strong of a default that. So I mean, it's kind of the same thing now. Like, how do I understand myself in this moment? What should I study to help me overcome?
Oh my goodness!
Right?
Oh my goodness! Can you stop it? It's awful.
Right? But what do you do? I mean, if the default is overthinking, how do I not think my way out of it?
Oh gosh, I don't know.
Right.
But do you see how? That fault or shortcoming, however you want to, and it's not a fault, because to think something through so thoroughly to make a correct decision is a great thing.
Right. It can be an asset on many occasions.
Correct. But do you think you've seen that brought to light in your career path, and how that has hindered you or helped you in various paths?
Right. Yeah, I would say so, because there's a lot of instances that come up that kind of require a response, and so I don't feel in control enough to, even if I do give a response, I doubt if that is the correct thing to have done. And I think that doubt becomes visible, becomes evident. And, you know, I'm calling into question, you know, what I've done, and I need to go back and process it. And then maybe I can support that decision after the fact. But within the moment, or as I'm thinking through it with others, it just it feels uncomfortable to be in that position for me.
So do you think it's been helpful to be in more positions like that to stretch you out of like letting those scenarios paralyze you and like almost like sharpening that tool of like having to respond? Or does it just make you so uncomfortable that you want to remove yourself from situations like
Well,
that?
I don't know, because like we were saying, like it can be a strength in many instances as well. So I think it's just becoming more cognizant of when it should be leveraged and when I need to just kind of, just run with my gut and be okay with it.
Okay. So should we go back to me then?
Back to you.
Okay, so back to me. So I think this one is kind of related to what you're talking about, where you'll kind of just stop and you'll like think for a while and then come up with the proper response based on all of this thinking and analysis. I would say my second fault and shortcoming is that I have a very short fuse. And I don't want to say like very, like I'm like this like very heated person. But of the two of us, right, like in like parenting, who's going to be the one that's going to yell at the kids?
Yeah.
It's totally me. Like it takes very little for me to be like, call you out, shut you down, you're done. Like,
yeah, and I don't, that happens, but I don't see that as a flaw necessarily. Like I would describe you kind of like this one of those quick, like passing summer storms where you got to put up with a little thunder and lightning along the way. But ultimately, like you saturate the earth with your water, and it passes, and the sun comes out pretty quickly afterwards as well.
Well, that makes me feel so much better about how I feel about. I think
But I never have to wonder what you're thinking. It's like, here it is.
The storm comes. There's a crack of
okay. Now I know where Rosanna stands on that.
Yeah. And we've talked about this a little bit in like just how like I respond in other episodes. But I think as a mom, I spend a lot of time with our kids. I'm mostly home with them. I do work, but it's, weekends or, evenings. And so I do a lot of the child rearing. So like on a day where it's a 12-hour day with the kids, I mean like, right, you're there to correct and admonish and sometimes punish your kids in order to train them what is right and what is wrong and what expectations are. And when they're loud and you have to be louder to kind of like get their attention. But that's something that I worry about in the sense that like people will see me with my kids and we have fun and we do great things and I'm intentional with them. People are like, oh, she's the perfect mom. Like, they think I'm, some kind of Disney princess and the birds are, they fold my clothes in the morning for me and everything is great. Being a mom is hard. Mm-hmm. And I think anybody that's a mom knows that you're not happy 100% of the time. It's not all sunshines and rainbows. But I think that's hard for me to know that, like, I have to, like, that's part of, like, who I am. And that's part of, like, I don't know. That's part of who I am, which I'm trying to work on. I'm trying to be, like, more zen in the moment. And you're so good with the kids for a variety of reasons. But you're like,
I never yell at them.
Well, I mean, you do,
never.
But it takes more for you than it does for me. But you're like, you will verbally like talk them through the scenario and the decision they made and how that's wrong in this like very calm manner. And so like I observe that and I'm like, okay, like I need to do more of that. Like maybe that's more of the approach that I need to take. Mm-hmm. Like I can still be a good, I'm a good mom as I am, but I could be better if I took a more like gentle approach. Mm-hmm. Yes. And then there are times where the kids are not at all responding to the gentle approach, and I feel like I have to yell to get their attention. So, sure. It's a double-edged sword. So here I am publicly saying that I yell at my kids.
Yeah.
And that's like hard for me to want to admit because as we said before, like not that I'm trying to pretend that I'm perfect, but like, that's hard for me to say that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think there's been multiple moments where I've seen the storm begin to rumble, and I've tried to
take shelter.
Right. I've tried to quell it. Just be like we're saying, like this is not the issue, or this is not the time to to go, and then maybe more grumble towards me than towards them at that instance, or whatever else may be going on. But I think that's one thing that I can be that voice too, just to be like, all right, like here's what's going on. Let's remember this conversation and try to recalibrate.
And we had talked about this in that last episode, that like piece of accountability. Like, I feel like this is something that I want to work on. I've told you that, and you've done that. Where you like look at me and be like, this is, they're boys. And that's what's helpful too. Like how a mom would respond to like what boys are doing, which does not make sense to me. You are a man, you were a boy. You're like, oh no, this is like a totally normal thing. This is nothing to like get upset about. So it's, when there's a little bit of accountability there, it's like you can help me like understand and process something so that I don't kind of give into that fault or to that shortcoming that I see. And you're like, okay, you can kind of like train me up a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. Challenge accepted.
All right, what's
don't
your
shoot the messenger.
What's number 2? I want to see what else you've got yourself.
I actually have. So we're supposed to choose 3. I wrote down more than 3, so now I have to select here. You won't be at all surprised by this, but this bothers me about me, and one thing I think I've improved.
Nothing.
On.
I feel like nothing bothers you. If there's a fault, it's that nothing bothers you. You're like such a cool cucumber all the time.
This bothers me about me, and I don't think you'll be surprised when I mention it, but I think because I like to, maybe stemming off of the first one, where I like to think through things and kind of come to my own assessment of whatever the topic is, I do have a strong propensity to think I know what is right. Right? Yeah, the look on your face is like, yeah, yeah, totally.
I don't know what you're talking about. This is news to me.
And it's, in part because I have poured, in many instances, but not all, poured a lot of time and energy into like examining a particular topic or an issue, or just ruminated on it enough to develop a strong opinion about, whatever it is. And so when someone has something that's different, even if it's like a neutral subject where they just do something differently, like sometimes I can look a tad askance at their...
Your choice of diction during these podcasts are just uncanny.
Yeah. So, and that bothers me about myself, because I would prefer not to have that. I don't know what you would call it, like that kind of wiring, that way of thinking that is even just internally, like just wondering if what this other person is saying or what this other person is doing is, up to par, because it in most cases, like, it just doesn't matter. It doesn't affect me. It doesn't mean anything. But I wouldn't say I'm a super judgmental person, but I think there are many moments where just internally I'm thinking to myself, like, that's not the way I would do it. And I love being around people who are just not that way. And I feel like most people are not that way, where you're just totally comfortable around them. You feel like 100% like just accepted by them and loved by them, like regardless of who you are. And I'm grateful to anyone who just accepts me and hangs out with me. So I think that's one area that I've been conscious of for a long time, and have tried to just consciously like correct my own thinking.
So you're saying that you're too judgmental of others is a flaw? Is one of your flaws?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I feel like to some extent we're all like that. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's how she did it. That's not how I would have done it. Like, right? Like, don't we? Right? Anybody who does something different than us, I would say, I bet most people could agree to some extent as one of their faults is being judgmental of others. But I feel like as I've gotten older, and as our like friends and family have become more diverse, I think it becomes easier to like accept differences, because not everyone is just like you. Mm-hmm. And so you see a variation of things where people are still good and they may hold the same values, but they're the way they display them, or like the way they
think, or the way that they can run life. Yeah.
Right. Like the values are the same, but like their life may look different.
That's what I was going to say.
It's not that you're judging them. You're like, oh, we can think the same things or have the same values or beliefs, but like the way you live your life is very different than ours, because, you've chosen to orient it this way. And I think that's good to see, that it doesn't have to all look one way. but that the values and beliefs are similar.
That's what I was going to say is the antidote is exposure to like more diverse. When if you're around people who the majority of whom do things just like you, then you may feel more comfortable around them. But at the same time, when someone is outside of that circle in any regard, then that's going to look strange. But if you're around a lot of people who I guess, look strange in a sense, then it stops really being a thing and you don't have to think about it.
Well, I think what I found is by hanging out with people who are different than you, what I'm always surprised by is although they may look different than you, so whether that's, for a variety of reasons, to the core, we're so similar. Mm-hmm. And that's like what always like, there's like this wow moment every time where I'm like, we couldn't be any more different yet. We are the same.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Total tangent there, but.
No, I think that's right on point.
All right. So then are we at number 3?
Number 3 for you.
Okay. So number 3, I would say, I'm very critical about myself. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a fault that I've been working on more recently to correct. Because I think, I would say like the last 1.5 to 2 years, I feel like I was letting how I perceived myself hold me back from what I'm capable of. Mm-hmm. Like I would give myself excuses for why I couldn't do certain things because I didn't have a good enough perception of maybe like who I was or where maybe there was some like actual talent or good that I could be using because I was kind of like afraid of who I am. Mm-hmm. It was hard for me to acknowledge my strengths. It was hard of me to be proud of the good things about me when I spent like a big part of my life not loving myself for who I was because I was always focused on trying to be like somebody else. Mm-hmm. So I think working on trying to do things outside of the box has given me like the tools to like really grow this last year and be like, okay, these are things I'm good at. These are things I'm not good at. Like I'm going to be okay with what I'm good at. I'm going to work at what I'm not good at. And if people like me, then that's fine. But at this point, I finally feel like I like who I am.
Yeah.
And I like what I see. But for a really long time, like I let my own kind of critical voice in my head keep me from trying things because I thought I wasn't good enough to do them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we all have that voice, and it's just what volume do we allow it to be turned up, and how much do we listen to it?
Well, and I think for a long time for me, it had to do more with my appearance, where I wasn't like comfortable, or I thought like I should look different, or like in terms
I've
of
always
like
been comfortable with your appearance,
weight, or like health, or like lack thereof. Well, we've been together a long time. Been together how many years? 20
some,
21, 22, something like that. Married for 14. And so obviously through that time I've had kids, so we've gained weight, we've lost weight. And so, looking at yourself and kind of not recognizing who you are, like takes a little bit of like a mental, emotional toll on you. Because when you're not comfortable with how you look, you're also not comfortable around other people. Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is that no matter what I looked like to you, I always looked fine. And I don't want to say like fine, like, okay, you look fine. Like, you've always loved me.
You always looked like you. You always looked beautiful. Like it never really seemed to fluctuate with.
You really couldn't keep your hands
scale.
off me. It didn't really matter. But to me, it mattered. And there were times where like that kept, I just kind of wanted to recoil because I was not comfortable with myself. Mm-hmm. But then I let that kind of carry over into other realms where like I should have been trying and doing different things, but I let like my discomfort with my appearance keep me from putting myself out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's the girl thing that sometimes you don't understand. Like when I talk about things with, things in the woman realm, he's like, I really can't connect to this right now. Like, I know that I'm your best friend, but like,
you've said,
maybe you should like talk to your friend or your mom about this because this just does not compute in guy world.
I can understand it logically, but even that can be a struggle. But I think in terms of appearance, they say that women will tend to see themselves like lesser than what they are, and men will tend to think they're more attractive than what they really are.
Well, we've had this conversation.
Yeah.
As you get ready in the mirror, and you're like, I was looking at myself today when I was brushing my hair, and I thought,
checking myself
man,
out.
I look
Rosanna
good.
is so lucky. Yeah. But I think I think appearance is one aspect of that. But I think for you, and I think for the typical person, there's many areas where we have just this critical voice that tells us not to. Or I think especially now we compare ourselves to other people, or usually other people's highlight reels, and that is going to make that voice a little bit louder and keep us from shining in the ways that we could be. All right, I've got my third one here. All right, so this I guess this kind of goes along with the other two, but it's another facet of it. I am what I would call a simmerer. All right, so if you're the storm that it explodes and then it passes, then I'm more like the boiling pot of water on the stove. And many times when something bothers me, my response is no, like everything's fine. I'm that person in this relationship. Like, oh no, nothing's wrong. Everything's great. What? But what I've realized is that, like, while I might in other regards of my life, like, just kind of brood over a topic until I feel like I have a sense of control over it, when I'm feeling like frustrated or annoyed or disappointed or like whatever that negative is, then I'm just going to internalize it and brood over it until it actually becomes bigger than it ever really needed to be.
I 100%
Right,
agree.
I know you agree.
Because that is my...
I guessed it. Oh, we should have come up with a prize if we guessed
Yeah, it's
what
like
the other person...
What is it, like the newlywed game, right? You got to like hold up the sign, and if they match, you get points. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's exactly what I had for you.
All right. Well, shoot, I had other ones on my list. I should have brought those out. Okay. Well, let's explore this one, and if we have time, then we can get into some other faults and flaws.
Okay.
So I think it's because, like, for me, I don't want to feel negative about anything. And I often don't. Like, I'd say 90% of the time I'm happy-go-lucky. So when these feelings do come in for whatever reason, I feel like I want to, I almost don't want to admit that that's the case. I don't want to admit that there's something that has come up that I think has gone wrong or has disappointed me in some way. And so I'll just internalize it so that I can like almost like own that feeling a little bit more. And I feel like if I express it, then I don't know, I almost don't feel justified in feeling that way. Like, because if I look at everything that I have,
because
like,
you don't want to judge somebody else.
Everything's fine. Yeah, and I don't want to judge somebody else or disappoint someone else by letting them know like how they've let me down, or just like whatever's annoyed me. So, but I don't feel justified in having that feeling. So I almost want to reason myself out of it. But it backfires every time, like for years.
Every time.
Right. The more you keep it in, the worse it kind of spoils everything.
Yeah, I mean, we've had this conversation. We've had this conversation multiple times where it's like, you could have just told me in the moment that upset you, and then you
told me 3 days ago.
Right,
Then we could have fixed it. Yeah.
So then what I do is I basically follow him around the house for days, being like, "Hey, babe, everything okay?" And then he says, I even wrote on my sheet,
Oh.
I'm fine.
I'm fine.
And then I wrote, he sits and he stews. And then I hear about it well after the fact when it's too late. And like, I can't even apologize in that moment because he stewed on it so long. He's actually more aggravated now than he was 3 days ago. And then like,
well,
there's nothing I can do.
If it's about you, I'm more aggravated that you haven't figured it out in the meantime, because your powers of, telepathy have not.
But I know what the problem is. But I ask him, hey,
Right.
everything okay? Because I need him to, I say, he's a great communicator. Like, he has a blog, he writes articles, he has a podcast, but for some reason he cannot find the words to say, I'm disappointed because, or it upset me when you said this because. It's one sentence with a period for me to be like, okay, I'm really sorry I said that. But he, for some reason, cannot find the one sentence, but he will write a multi-paragraph thesis and post it on the internet.
Sure. Well, I'm not expressing my disappointment towards anyone in those either. So, all right, I have 2 questions for you. One is, do you think that I've improved in this regard over the last few years? I've gotten better at communicating.
You've definitely gotten better in communicating. We talked about those Monday nights, our like couch and together dates. And I think that was huge for us because there was an intentional time where we could talk about anything. And so sometimes it was work or sometimes it was, just other topics. And you were just it was like this practice of you like just communicating a feeling associated with like what was going on, and you were processing what was in your mind out loud, which seemed to help catapult you out of kind of like being in your head and making a decision about moving forward.
'Cause I've tried to be better about it.
Yeah, there's been some
because
intentional steps with it.
My other question, and this is kind of a weird one, but sometimes it's hard to say something. So, like, what are your thoughts on just maybe not just for us, but for like your typical couple? Like, what are your thoughts on like expressing some kind of like dismay or some negative feeling through like a text or through an email or through like something that it has a little bit more space built into it? Do you think that is a good idea or a bad idea?
That's interesting you say that, because you hate when people text. Like, I'm texting back and forth with someone. He's like, you're totally reading into that. That's not what she meant. And you should, if you want to talk to someone, you should call them.
Just talk to them face to face.
Yeah, not even call them. You should talk to them face to face. So it's interesting that you bring that up. But I think if it's hard for you to find the words, or it's right, like it's too confrontational for you, I don't know that I would send a text. But I mean, if it's a spouse, like a little note. Hey, sorry I was in a bad mood last night. I did get a little upset when this happened. So it's like, at least it's like, okay, I can acknowledge that this happened.
You almost need like a template, and I can just print it out, fill in the blank lines with whatever.
And put it in the take-home folder for the mom to read,
You're going to hear the printer going. You're like, oh, shoot, I'm going to get another note.
Is that how like telegrams used to come through? It was like... So, I mean, but if that's a tool that works...
We just almost have to agree on like what we're... Because then I don't want someone to be insulted either and say, oh, like...
Are you afraid to tell me because you think I'm going to yell at you? But it's more about you, right? Like, it's just hard for you to... Yeah. And I feel like we're talking about yelling. Like, people are going to think I'm this dragon lady that's just always yelling.
No, I mean, it has nothing to do with you. And I think with other people too, just depending on the type of relationship, like it can be hard to bring up something in a way which you were hurt or offended or disappointed, because then I feel like I'm going to like put those feelings on this other person, and then they're going to be hurt and offended or disappointed, and that doesn't seem very productive. So I'm like, if I can just stomach this and move on, maybe that would be better.
Yeah,
and maybe in some cases it depends on what it is, but most of the time,
the toothpaste in the sink, right? Maybe no need to.
You just do it,
right? Just clean it up, but. I think honesty is probably the best policy.
Yeah. All right. So
your last one was what I had guessed, or what I had said for you. So the only unfinished, unresolved thing here at about 43 minutes. Is a fault of mine that you see that you would like to call out publicly.
Okay. Well, let me consult my list here. I only get one.
Number 72 says.
I'm kidding. All right, so I know you totally peeked at this list. So there's one that I didn't write down that it actually came up a little bit earlier on. So we can talk about what I wrote down here later on. But I think this one will be more interesting too. It actually has to do with the subject of our conversation today. So I think I'm just going to put it out there. I'm
like so worried right now.
I think you are very bad at taking feedback.
I am very bad at taking feedback.
Because I know, and so sometimes I don't want to say anything because I like your first reaction can be like almost to nip back. So if I say like, "Hey, Rosanna, like this is what I'm seeing," and then I know I'm
going to also tell you
whatever
what
I just said. It's it's going to be like reflected back to me, and it'll be it'll be like my fault, or how it's like I'm equally guilty in some regard. And so I think we've talked about that too, because it's almost comical. Like I'm like, I knew you were going to say that, but actually listen to what I said. And
I knew that I was going to do that, but that's like my initial disposition, where like it's like I have so much almost like shame.
Yeah.
Like whereas like I don't want to be told that I am not who I'm supposed to be, and so my natural inclination is to like play defense.
Yeah.
And then inflict it back at you. So to be like, okay, you're also not perfect.
But I will say this too, or maybe I should rephrase, because you're not really bad at taking feedback. In the initial moment, you are prone to respond that way. But I think like over time, maybe over the course of a few minutes or a day or a week, then you you do like think about it, and then we have, I think, a more productive conversation afterwards about what, whatever it was. So I guess in that regard, like you're really good at it. It's maybe just if we could just skip that first step where we're defensive.
You get the storm, and then after comes the cool rain. You wish we could just skip to the cool rain that nourishes as opposed to the...
Yeah, something like that. So, I want to bring that up too, because I know we've talked about that, and I think that you're aware of it, and you've grown in that regard. And for me, like, I'm not even, like phased by your response. Sometimes I'm like, all right, we'll get through this portion of the response, and then I know the good stuff is coming.
Well, and I think it's the same way with the I'm fine. I have to ask the question, I think it's like a minimum of like 37 times over the course of 4 days to move past the I'm fine to what the actual problem is or was.
Yeah.
And so like, it's just several days of I'm fine before I get the answer. And knowing that about you and what you know about me, like, helps us work through it, but maybe we could be a little more efficient by being a little more honest and a little bit more open in those regards and a little more vulnerable in the moment instead of after the moment.
Yeah. So we appreciate all of you listening to Rosanna and I have this session where we're open with one another and open with you as well. And it is, I think, a productive, even quasi-therapeutic kind of exercise to be involved in with one another.
Yeah, and I really think the takeaway here, if there is one, is that we can't be so afraid of admitting our mistakes and missteps that we're reluctant to change.
Yeah.
Because even in our last episode, we talked about like in the world that we are in and the relationships we're in, we have to continue to move forward. And in order to do that, like there needs to be growth. And in order to grow, you have to be able to acknowledge what isn't working to make it work. So I still cannot believe that we had this conversation. I still cannot believe that I am admitting like these faults publicly for people that we know and don't know to be like, oh, they really don't have it all together. Or it's not all sunshine and rainbows and puppies at their house.
Well, that's one of the reasons I thought it would be good to do this episode too. So like, I don't want people to get the wrong idea and think like, oh, they have it all together because of this reason or that reason.
Or we know them and we know they don't have it all together yet. They're pretending that they do.
Sure. So I think that's the case of like, let's kind of engage in this with one another, but also show people that it's okay to have this kind of conversation. So no one puts us on a pedestal, not that they should, but that we all are kind of in the same boat of like just being human and acknowledging that we all have ways that we can grow.
All right. Well,
one other piece of feedback, too, is that I don't think that we have to, I think engaging in the self-reflection is important, but I also think it's helpful to ask for feedback as well. So maybe there's a spouse or relatives or colleagues, all of whom know you to a certain extent and can probably, if requested, like share some, maybe very enthusiastically, some of the flaws or shortcomings you may have. And I think it should be part of our regular exercise to request that feedback so that we can always remain cognizant of where we want to try to double down and reinforce who we are.
Well, and maybe you don't have to say it as can you please list for me my faults and shortcomings? Maybe like, what are some areas I could work on to strengthen who I am? Mm-hmm. Something a little more positive.
Right. Yeah. However you choose to phrase
areas
that.
of improvement. Well, thank you for joining us for this episode. I hope it was helpful for you, for your relationships, and even for how you see yourself moving forward as we continue to grow in the year 2020, the one that is unprecedented like any other.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us today, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks so much for listening to today's show. We hope you will use this conversation as a starting point for your own. We hope you're encouraged to think and act more intentionally.
If you want to learn more, you can visit our website, therelentlesspursuitpodcast.com, where you can find notes on today's show, plus additional blog posts, and you can subscribe to our free members list.
Please subscribe, leave a review, and share with your friends.
Facebook and Instagram are two great places to connect with us for daily doses of our quotable quotes, behind the scenes, and real-time photos, videos, and challenges.
Until next time, let us know how you are taking life off autopilot
and relentlessly pursuing what matters.